Story 1. I went to my 10-year-old daughter's school for parent-teacher conferences and opened her locker to take a look inside. There wasn't much in it, but lying at the bottom was a book from our local library about how to plan a wedding. It was not a fun one with pictures of wedding dresses and stuff. It was called Wedding Rites, a complete guide to traditional vows, music, ceremonies, blessings, and interfaith services. I was baffled, and her teachers and I had a good laugh about it. When I got home and asked her about it, she explained that she and her best friend were trying to marry their dogs to each other. Story 2. When my brother was a teenager, we went through about 3 computers. He bought his own, and when that one died, he started using my dad's laptop. It was quickly on the brink of failure. He asked me to fix it for him, and sure enough, it was so packed full of viruses that it took hours to repair. He asked what was on it, and I had the unpleasant task of showing him the large amount of disturbing content. He was banned from using other people's computers without supervision, and my dad canceled the internet. Note: this was my brother. I was not responsible for taking care of him or setting rules. I just fixed a laptop because I was asked to. Story 3. Searching kids' internet histories. Kid 1. Pornography. So much pornography. Kid 2. How tall is the tallest bridge? What layers can you see in the Grand Canyon? Happy goat videos. Kids, man. Story 4. When I was 19, I came home from a night out with my girlfriends to find my mother hysterical and crying, dramatically asking, "How could you do this to me?" She had found a sandwich bag with an unknown substance in it and somehow concluded that it was heroin and that I had secretly become a drug addict. It was small bacon-flavored dog treats for our Chihuahua, which I had portioned out to keep them from getting stale. It was pretty obvious that my mother had no idea what heroin looked like. Story 5. A rusted train nail. Not snooping. She folded it up in a sweatshirt to keep it safe while I was putting away laundry. She thought it was an artifact. She couldn't believe something could be that rusty without being 100 years old. Story 6. My son was 15 at the time. I went into his room and tried to get him to clean it because it was a disaster area. I was ranting at him. Look at all the garbage on the floor. Look at the dirty dishes. Then I spotted a drinking glass, like a pint glass, on the floor. I said, "You have glass on the floor where you could step on it and slice your foot wide open." I leaned down and picked it up. It had stuff in it. I took a closer look. He had stuffed it with a couple of socks in the bottom and taped a nitrile glove over the top. The glass was slippery in my hand. I stood there looking at it with dawning horror as I realized that I had found his homemade fleshlight. I just set it down on the floor and walked out. We have never spoken of it since. Story 7. When I was a teenager, my dad found homemade dildos I made out of pencils taped together, a sock, more tape, and plastic wrap. He knew what they were and was upset. I wish he had left it alone, but he confronted me. I insisted it was actually an art project, so I painted them and left them on display to dry for weeks to try to prove my point. Story 8. Science experiments like the insides of stress balls emptied out. Hair gel mixed with glue. Glue mixed with stress ball goop. Pencil with layers of glue as if it were dipped. Glued fuzzy sticks art, apparently. Another teenager has empty snack wrappers stuffed behind their bed. Thankfully, he does put his used tissues in the trash can. Story 9. My dad was moving my car in the driveway, yelling out the car window about how it smelled like marijuana. He reached into the center console and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. "And what about these? I thought you didn't smoke cigarettes." "I don't, they're crayons." Sure enough, the cigarette box was full of crayons. I was a marijuana user, not a cigarette smoker. Story 10. She had been in trouble at school because after her father left, she found an old marijuana vape pen of his and got caught with it. I went to make sure there was nothing else like that and found a love letter from her boyfriend promising to take her to McDonald's every day and play Panic at the disco at their wedding when they got married. It seemed like she was sleeping with this letter under her pillow. I put it right back where I found it. Story 11. My mom would do this when I was a teenager. I got a diary and hid it. When she found it and opened it, all she found was in big writing, "Thought you found something good." Huh? She laughed about it for the next 20+ years. I miss her. Story 12. I was about 13, living in a rural area, and my best friend at the time was always up to something. For some reason, we decided we could secretly raise chickens in the forest behind my house. So we bought an entire chicken starter kit, complete with feed, lights, and a book on how to do it right. We attempted to shoplift a few baby chicks in her sweater from the farm supply store, but got caught on the way out. The plan never materialized because no one would sell us baby chicks. Later, my mother found the starter kit in my closet. It was a strange conversation. She was expecting to find drugs and was mainly upset that the store did not call her when we got caught attempting to shoplift baby chicks. Story 13. Found a notebook labeled Top Secret Plans. Inside was a full blueprint for how they would fake being sick to skip school, complete with fake cough sound effects and a backup crying strategy if I did not believe it. I was half impressed, half offended. They even wrote, "Mom might pretend to be mad, but she will secretly respect the hustle." They were right. Story 14. I was a teenager being watched. I had undiagnosed schizophrenia at the time. I was building a time machine from old computer parts that I found in people's trash. Thankfully, someone found it because of the way I had designed it. I was going to electrocute myself to send myself back in time. When I discovered my time machine was gone, I thought the government was after me and made myself homeless so they would not find me. I was 14 or 15 years old then. I am medicated now and doing much better. Story 15. My friend looked through her stepson's phone and sent me a screenshot of him planning to harm her and her children while they were sleeping. That is very frightening. Story 16. I don't snoop, but I do clean and organize from time to time. My teenager knows this and also knows that unless I find something really illegal, I'm not too worried. Having said that, he had a suit of armor made out of watermelon rinds and forgot to throw it out. A whole new ecosystem was growing on it. Story 17. When my oldest daughter moved out, she thought she took her whole knife collection with her. Wrong. We found 7 more knives over the course of the next year as we slowly cleaned the room out. Knives that she didn't even remember she had. It wasn't creepy, like something was wrong with her. It was just like, how in the world do you amass this many collectible knives by the age of 18? Doing laundry and finding a pile of the nastiest, crustiest, stiffest, most used-up men's socks one could ever encounter. Those socks held an entire planet-wide generation of semen. I said it was the last time I would ever do our son's laundry, as he was 15 and more than old enough to do his own. It only became more disturbing when I realized that was my very adult mid-30s brother's laundry, left over from when his washer had been broken and he was washing at our house. For my youngest, the worst thing we found is a fart bag where she and her best friend were trying to save up farts. They had one at her best friend's house too. Her mom made them throw it out, saying it was unsanitary. I just howled and left it alone. Fart bag. Hilarious. Why didn't I ever try that as a kid? Story 18. After he moved out, I found a huge pencil case with every pen he had used throughout high school, over 90 pens, all completely out of ink. I messaged him about it, and he replied, "Yeah, that's my pen graveyard." As if it were the most normal thing ever. It is not a homemade fleshlight, but it definitely made me pause and wonder what kind of hoarder I had created. Story 19. My mom found my sister's marijuana pipe in the house. She looked at me and said, "Do you know what this is?" I said no, ran to my room, put a 2-foot bong in my pant leg, and went to my friend's house. Story 20. I continue fighting to forget when my father discovered my explicit fanfiction in my desk. You never do, though. Story 21. My ex's son had explicit photos of her and me. His mother's face was in a few of the pictures, so it was clear whose private parts he was looking at. Story 22. I'm not my parents, but they told me and my sister that the funniest thing they ever uncovered were the adult comics my sister and I drew for each other when we were young teens. We would take turns drawing a row of panels, adding to the story we were building together. Mostly, it was an excuse to say swear words we weren't allowed to say. The one that forever lives in my head is one my sister drew herself and slipped under my door to share with me while we were supposed to be sleeping. It was a really well-drawn SpongeBob comic that had him going around town and saying "fuck you" to everyone, then waking up the next morning, thinking it was a dream, All the townspeople were in his bedroom and told him, "Fuck you," as a response, because it wasn't a dream after all. Our parents discovered our hoard of comics hidden under my sister's mattress when they went to replace it. My sister and I were both in tears, thinking we were going to get in trouble, but our parents were laughing their heads off. My sister still has those comics somewhere and recently found them again. We read them all, and our childish humor mostly still holds up. We both still make comics in our spare time, so that was the beginning of a side hobby we share. Story 23. I've got the reverse story. I was about 14, snooping in my parents' closet, and found an envelope marked private. I wasn't sure what kind of secrets my parents held, but I couldn't help taking a look. Let me tell you, a bunch of developed pictures of my mom in lingerie wasn't what I expected. I vowed never to snoop again because 14 years later, I still can't scrub my memory. Edit. I didn't realize this would get that much traction. Just remember, your parents were intimate, and their parents were before them. For the love of God, don't snoop, or you'll be reminded of that in an unpleasant manner. Story 24. I was about 16 years old and had always been in trouble for smoking marijuana. My dad hated it. One day, I came home from school and saw a homemade bong on the kitchen table. It was a water bottle and pen setup, and my dad was fuming, yelling at me that I was smoking marijuana in the house. I kept telling him it was not mine. He accused me of lying, but I was the only child still living at home. The next day, my dad came over and apologized for yelling at me. The mysterious bong belonged to my mom. It was the greatest apology I have ever received. Story 25. A bucket full of snapping turtle eggs. My child and their friends saw the turtle nesting, took the eggs from the nest, and placed them near the heater, hoping to hatch the babies. They were not snooping but trying to find some missing dishes. Story 26. A suicide note. He was in an ambulance, intubated, on the way to the hospital. 25 years later, he is a great son and father. Story 27. Not weird, but when I was about 15, my mom confronted me with a small bag asking, "What is this?" She was obviously thinking drugs or something. I am a nerd. It was the bag that the screws for my new hard drive came in. Story 28. I have a 3-year-old son. The only thing I have learned from reading this thread is to give him a heads up if I ever feel the need to clean his room without him present. Story 29. 1. At least 8 glasses of water like it is a sign. 2. Literal piles of trash under her covers that she definitely slept with. 3. Random half-eaten bags of various chocolates. 4. Just gobs of mucus on the headboards. 5. Unopened fruit juice pouches that, based on flavor, are very old artifacts in her drawers. 6. Clustered used acne patches on her dresser, the walls, just so many. This child is an honor student. By the way, I was not snooping. I was usually searching for a missing Chromebook. Story 30. Not snooping, but I was sitting on his bed chatting with him one day and glanced over to notice a hand towel behind the chair. I grabbed the hand towel and immediately regretted it. I gave him his own towels and told him he was responsible for washing them from then on. Story 31. I have 2 boys. I generally try to avoid going through their rooms unless it is absolutely necessary. They are not allowed to take food into their rooms. They are allowed to snack, but I want them to do it at the dining table and clean up after themselves. All the spoons disappeared. I found them and a bunch of pudding cups in my oldest son's nightstand. The house started to stink. The air return goes through my youngest son's closet. I looked and found a suitcase full of half-eaten food that was turning into a science project. He would sneak food into his room and, thinking he was about to get caught, stash the scraps in the suitcase and toss it in his closet. After the oldest moved out for college, the stink increased. I found a pint of Ben & Jerry's sitting on a shelf in his closet. Story 32. I apologized to my parents for the dead hermit crab and my brother's Internal Revenue Service forms that they found in my bedroom. Story 33. My coworker found all the lunches she had packed for her son under his bed. The mystery of the weird smell was solved. Story 34. My mom would snoop through my things constantly. One day, when I was 18, I was going through my room and getting rid of things. I had a black trash bag where I was putting items that couldn't be resold or were worthless. This included 2 or 3 large dildos that were somewhat melted because I did not store them properly. She went through the bag and asked me about the other items. Why would you go through my trash? I hope she liked what she saw. Story 35. Well, personally, as a kid, I found this thick piece that looked like glass. However, it didn't seem like glass. It was triangle-shaped with a round bottom. I really don't think it was glass, but it was clear. In my child's mind, I thought it was a shark tooth, so I took it to school. It stayed in my desk until Thursday when my teacher found it and called a meeting. Despite being fairly bookish and quiet, they thought I was going to hurt someone with it. So they called a meeting with my parent and brought it out, asking what it was for. I was excited and said it was the shark tooth I found in the backyard and was saving it for show and tell. Then it clicked with them and they gave it back. It's been lost since then. Story 36. One of my best friends keeps tabs on his teenager's device and internet usage. He is an information technology security manager who was formerly a forensic accountant. Overall, he is very knowledgeable. He mostly sets the usual parental alerts and blocks but is much more thorough in preventing workarounds. Regarding his 17-year-old son's habits over the past few years, it's so boring. God, it's so boring. It's all literally Fortnite. Story 37. My mom found weed in a plastic bag in my sister's room. She replaced the bag with a new bag of lawn grass. Story 38. I have never been able to bring myself to. My children are 15 and 19 now. My mother and sister constantly went through my room as a teenager, read my journals, dug through my drawers and backpack, and embarrassed me with things they found. I have never been able to go through my children's phones, devices, rooms, or anything, even when I know I probably should have. Story 39. I do not have children, but I have to say that the most embarrassing thing my parents ever found in my room was the poetry I wrote. Story 40. My mother found around 500 pounds tucked away in a drawer. She concluded that I was a drug dealer hiding it from her. I don't know how she came to that conclusion, but when I got home from school, she sat me down seriously and cried. No, I had just been saving Christmas, birthday, and lunch money for years to get a dog because my parents said they couldn't afford it. I still wasn't allowed to get one, though. I am 28 now and I have 2 dogs, so I'm not mad anymore. Story 41. Found a pile of trimmed pubic hair under my high school son's bed, though I wasn't snooping. I thought, well, I guess someone has been shaving, threw it away in the trash, and moved on with my day. I never said anything to him about it. Story 42. Not the same thing, but sort of. When I lived with my grandparents, they were pretty strict. My grandfather had these taxidermy fish in my room that I used to stash items in their mouths. Fast forward a few years, and I am visiting them, collecting things from my old room. For fun, I check the mouths of the fish and find a sack of pills and a joint. I now have those fish since my grandparents have passed away. They hang in my basement. Story 43. My mother found very dirty notes my boyfriend wrote me in high school in the early 1990s. She became very upset when I got home from school because she thought we were having sex. It would not have been a big deal. We were 16. However, we had not done anything. He was just writing erotic fantasies starring me. Laugh out loud. Story 44. Not my children but my father. I was going through my father's keepsakes after he passed away. All of it was harmless except for a 1x2-inch computer-printed photo of my father at about 70 years old, completely naked with a photoshopped large appendage. I assume he or someone else did this as a joke, but I needed to cleanse my eyes. Story 45. A YouTube watch history full of National Joint Management Insurance commercials. She is on the autism spectrum and was obsessed with insurance commercials for a while. Story 46. I loved sugar as a kid and had a big Ziploc bag full of powdered sugar. Nearby was a spoon that I was melting chocolate on for some reason because I thought it looked cool. I was 12 years old, and my mom thought I was doing drugs. Story 47. I once found the Subway wrapper for my sub that he helped me look for 5 months earlier when I was 8 months pregnant, under his bed. I was looking forward to that sub so much. It had tomatoes and banana peppers on it, And when I saw he had taken them all off, it made me very angry. The sub just disappeared, and he helped me look for it in the refrigerator. It has been over 7 years. He is 17 now, and I still bring it up. Story 48. I kept finding my kitchen salt container in my teenager's closet. I still don't know why and never got an answer. Yes, it was just sea salt, no other substance. Story 49. My mother would trash my room weekly and then tell me to clean it after hitting me with what she found. Clothes, utensils, a bowl one time, my own toys, books in the wrong place. She would throw out anything of mine that was not put away. A few years ago, I made the mistake of letting her into my house. She again trashed the place for payback. Some of my dishes were broken. She flipped my bed upside down, threw things around, and dumped my cat's litter box onto the floor. Needless to say, along with many other antics, she is not allowed near me, my significant other, our cats, our house or cars, and if we choose, any children. I do not trust that woman to babysit any future kids we have, even if she paid me $5 million. So parents, if you have ever done this, just don't. Unless you smell something gross or think something might be wrong. Story 50. Not a parent, but I stumbled across my little sister's diary when I was cleaning her room. Because I was inconsiderate, I read a few pages and discovered she is secretly a great writer. She has no interest in writing fiction and did not finish high school. But she described the mundane details of her life with incredible humor and observation. I have never said anything, but I hope she is still keeping a diary. Story 51. The diary stories here are sad. I bought both my daughters, ages 10 and almost 12, diaries with combination spin locks. I told them they could write or draw anything they wanted and promised I would never read them. I know my eldest, becoming quite the angsty preteen, has written terrible things about me when she's mad at me because I told her to. I swore I would never touch their diaries because I know I'm not always the easiest to talk to. I tend to go into immediate fix-it mode when sometimes they just want to vent, which I am working on. I also know I would get my feelings hurt if I read their diaries, so that's a definite no for me. As for the weirdest thing I have ever found in their room, it was probably the accidental hooch slurry I found when my youngest put a sandwich bag full of apple slices and tangerines in her jewelry box and forgot about it in the closet. The bag eventually popped, and I couldn't figure out why I was smelling alcohol and rot right before I found it. Story 52. Is it snooping if the letter was in the laundry basket? I don't mean in his pocket. It was literally between two pieces of clothing. I found out the current girlfriend was using emotional manipulation on him. He was 16 or 17 and didn't want to date her anymore because she was mentally unstable, among other reasons. She told him she would harm herself if he broke up with her. I didn't say anything about the letter. I just dropped it beside the clothes basket in his room as if it had fallen there instead of inside the basket. Logically, it probably fell off his dresser. My daughter was only a year older than him. A few days later, when she was home, we were all in the living room. I brought up an article I had read and showed her. We started talking about it. It was about teenage suicide. We discussed warning signs, what to do, and the difference between an actual mental illness like depression and simply feeling sad. That was when I pointed out that when someone uses it as a threat, they are trying to control you because they want you to do what they want, not because they will actually do it. Even if you don't give in, they are not going to do it. It is just a threat. He kept turning his head toward us while we talked. I ignored that and acted like I was just talking to her. About 2 weeks later, he finally broke up with her for good. She is still alive and should be about 29 now. So I guess I was right. Story 53. I once found a syringe and needle inside her Tickle Me Elmo doll. This was the first proof that my daughter really needed help. I flew her to rehabilitation out of state within a few months. Story 54. In high school, a friend's mother found their bong. She said she was going to throw it out. About a month later, a different friend went to take a little bud from his father's secret stash and found the bong. This led to us uncovering that the mother and the father were having an affair. Story 55. My mom did not snoop exactly. She was just cleaning my little brother's closet, donating old clothes, and throwing out trash. She found a bag of clothes she thought were dirty from one of his trips to his dad's house. They were not dirty clothes. They were feminine clothes, dresses, stockings, and similar items. She put them back and never confronted him about it, but asked me to help her get it off her chest. Story 56. Parents found and read my diary. It included how much I liked being intimate with my boyfriend, with detailed descriptions including how much I loved the sounds he would make. If that was not mortifying enough, that's how they also discovered I had been sexually assaulted in the past. They made me go to therapy. I try to block from my mind them finding and reading all of that. Story 57. I'm a parent of teenagers, but this anecdote is about my husband. I went out to help my mother-in-law clean out her house to sell it and move to our city. She had lived there for about 40 years. My husband moved out after high school. He graduated in 1997. His old room wasn't intact but did have a few pieces of his old furniture. I found a dirty spoon mixed in with some of his schoolwork in a desk drawer. It was part of a set of silverware my mother-in-law still uses. I was annoyed on her behalf, but we got a good laugh out of it. It's the circle of life, I guess. Story 58. I searched through Google queries for 2 hours about chicken anatomy. I'm not joking. After 10 p.m., do chickens lay eggs? Chicken laying eggs. Chicken cloaca. Chicken laying slow motion. Cloaca. I thought my child was engaging in inappropriate behavior regarding chickens. It turns out there was a prior discussion about different types of eggs from non-mammals. For example, snakes lay soft eggs, birds lay hard eggs, insects lay eggs in lines or groups, and spiders lay eggs in sacks. He found chickens laying eggs humorous. It had not occurred to him that spending multiple hours on this after 10 p.m. could be interpreted as possibly sexual. Story 59. I found a rolling machine in my teenage son's bedroom. I was horrified. He was only 13. I couldn't find any trace of marijuana in the machine, and it looked clean. I took a photo and sent it to my husband. He wrote back that it was a magic trick used to make banknotes disappear. Story 60. As a teenager, I snooped and regretfully found my mother's small and classy adult toy. Story 61. Not a snoop, but a complete cleaning of the room after a week of warnings. Found a small Halloween pumpkin under the bed. This was in April. Story 62. A full human feces inside an empty face wipe container. No toilet paper. I was more concerned than if I had found a bag of marijuana. Story 63. I wasn't snooping per se, but she had just left to go to the Renaissance Festival for the weekend with her boyfriend and friends. I went into her room to do a quick scan for any dishes to fill the dishwasher, also because we were low on silverware as usual with teenagers. And then, there it was, a vibrator right on the edge of her pillow. It looked like she meant to hide it, but the pillow had been pushed back or something before she left, and she didn't notice. I just grabbed all the dishes I could see and left. Never spoke about it or brought it up. She used to work at Spirit Halloween. I guess the managers and employees place items they want next to the dumpster after they finish cleanup for the season, since everything else gets thrown away. She had so much spooky baby stuff. I miss her. Story 64. Found while cleaning. A Costco-sized bag of grated Parmesan cheese with a spoon in it, sitting next to his bed. Story 65. I was a kid. I left for my first day at a large public high school. When I came home, my mom was hysterical because she was cleaning and unintentionally dumped out everything I had and read my diary, poetry, and more. She decided I was a violent, drug-addicted nightmare. I was sent to a therapist that night, followed by 3 months of parental silent treatment and stonewalling. It has been 34 years, and I still remember what the therapist said. For all your family puts you through, you are well adjusted. If you can leave for college to get some space and feel safe, please do that. I was not doing drugs at all, and the violence I wrote about in my journals reflected violent family members and bullying at school. I fantasized about what it might be like to be physically strong and safe. My mom could have asked me what was behind what I wrote, why I felt anger and a lack of safety, but she never did. It was never actually about me. It was only about her feeling like a failure as a parent. Ironically, it was one of her biggest failures as a parent. Story 66. Not me, but a customer of mine. She comes in, gets her usual, and I ask her about her day. She tells me she's worried because she found something in her son's room, and it's bothering her because she doesn't know what it is. Plus, her son is in high school, I think a freshman. We're sophomore. I work at a smoke shop, so she tries describing it and asks if it could possibly be a smoking device, some type of bong, or maybe even something worse. I couldn't figure out what she was describing. She said it was a white, hard-cased object that looks sort of like a to-go cup. I tell her it might be a discreet smoking device that looks like a cup or something. She said she actually has it with her and goes to grab it. She comes back carrying the mysterious object in a towel. She opens the towel for me to see, and looking me dead in my eyes was a pocket-sized adult toy. I started bursting out laughing, telling her not to touch it and to wash her hands as soon as possible. A lot of crazy things happen in that smoke shop, but this was one of my funnier experiences. I had to explain it to her, which was kind of embarrassing for both of us. Story 67. My wife does this and always gets upset or angry about what she finds. I choose not to look because I am not interested in discovering things. You will always find something if you go looking for it. Story 68. I found that he had better marijuana than I did. Swapped the low-quality stuff. Taught him a lesson for not sharing with his dear old dad. Story 69. Not my bedroom but my school backpack. My mom was obsessed with finding me doing bad things to ground me, so much so that she was completely delusional and erratic. One day, I had some ice cream I had picked out at the store and took it to school with me along with 2 spoons. I ate the ice cream with a friend after first period, no big deal. Should also note I did have a lighter. I didn't smoke at this point in time, but I was about 14 and curious. One day, I got pulled out of class and taken down to the school officer's office. My mom and the officer were sitting at the desk. They sat me down and asked if I had something to tell them. I had no clue what was going on, so I said no. Turned out my mom found the spoons and the lighter, freaked out thinking I was shooting heroin, and went to my school for some reason. They questioned me for about 20 minutes, just wanting me to say where I got my drugs from while I tried telling them it was from ice cream and to check the school cameras. Finally, the officer asked what kind of ice cream it was. 16 years later, I still remember. Double dark chocolate gelato, brand Talenti. When I said that, they both finally relented. It was wild because they never asked to look at my arms for track marks, didn't ask me to take a drug test, and the spoons didn't have any soot or were bent. It was literally just some delusion my mom made up. Story 70. My diary talks about how depressed I felt in my late teens. It made me revisit that dark time in my life. I remember what my family was going through and how difficult it all felt. It is like how certain smells bring back a memory or feeling. Words are powerful and can transport you. Story 71. Wasn't snooping, just collecting dishes after a sleepover and found a needle loaded. My heart sank. It turned out to be insulin from one of the girls who spent the night. The mom called in a panic and cleared it up before I had a super tough talk with my daughter. Phew. Story 72. As a reversal, I was snooping in my parents' room and found out that my dad, who apparently gave up smoking before vaporizers even existed, had 27 vaporizers stuffed in his drawer. Story 73. When I was a teenager, my dad used to wash my sheets. After he made my bed, he would always put my personal massager right back where it was, under my pillow. Story 74. When I was a teenager, my father found me and my friend missing from my room as we had snuck out. He called me to tell me that we both needed to get home immediately. I had a car but did not take it, reasoning that if I did not sneak out using my car, it could not be taken away from me. I had also decided to take some psychedelic mushrooms that night. By the time we were able to get back to my room, I was pretty intoxicated. No, we did not use the door. Yes, we snuck directly back into my room. My father came to check that we were back and started to tell me my consequences very angrily, until he looked into my eyes and saw my pupils. All he said after that was, "Damn it," followed by my name, and then he walked away. Yes, I did get grounded from my car. Story 75. My son had been sneaking alcohol into the house, and I kept finding empty bottles around. I was in his room, and it looked like a half-empty bottle of cola with a strange smell, similar to Dr. Pepper. I took a taste to see if it was alcohol and realized I had just taken a sip from his spit bottle. Story 76. Mine the opposite. I'm a parent living in a place where cannabis is legal, and one of my children had fairly sticky fingers when she was a younger teenager. At first, I hid it in my top drawer with other things I thought would make a teenage girl leap back in horror, but this didn't work for long. So I got a dial safe. It's a large one, picked up cheaply at an auction. Solid and sturdy. That's where anything harmful or fun is kept. The code is something similar to weed, but not exactly that. One day, I look forward to telling her that the code to the safe was something insanely simple and stupid that she would probably have figured out eventually. I believe the reaction will be legendary, and I will get quite a laugh from it. So far, there are no signs she's cracked it, nor the other two for that matter. I smile about the answer, since it's going to make them all facepalm for a week when they move out for good. Story 77. My mom found my lyrics once. She thought I was depressed and suicidal. I was just mimicking the words of the music I listened to and still do at the time. Story 78. Not my child, but my best friend found used menstrual pads under her daughter's bed. Her daughter had not started her period yet and has no sisters, so there was no clue where she got the pads. My friend was changing her daughter's sheets and smelled something unusual. If you have ever had a period, you would understand. My friend threw the pads out but never asked her daughter about it. The daughter is now 22 years old, and I still remember this from time to time and wonder. Story 79. I don't know if it is strange, but I found out my son is queer. I did not say anything, but he came out about a month later. I am the only one who knows, outside of his little friend, and I am just glad he felt comfortable telling me. I gave him lots of love and affirmations. Story 80. A very creepy stuffed animal, hand-carved with a mason jar inside. Yes, a homemade stash jar. Story 81. A jar of pickles. I only found it because I was getting bed sheets after asking them to put them in the laundry for a week. When asked about it, my teenager said he did not want to share and liked the juice. Story 82. I was in my 12-year-old daughter's room and saw a small box with the lid off, so I went over to take a look. It was like something from a B-grade horror movie, so much to take in. At first, I couldn't figure out what it was but realized it was the head of a bird still with feathers and sunken eyes, plus the stench of rotting. She had it, resting on tissue, obviously putting some effort into the head's comfort. Next to that was a miniature Bible and a cross she made of wood. The whole thing was like a strange shrine. I eventually found out what it all meant. She found the bird's head outside, felt sorry for it, and had made an open burial or something for it. She loves animals, but still. Story 83. My brother, may he rest in peace, was a troublemaker. He was 17 months older, and even though our parents are typical baby boomers who heavily favored boys, he was always trying to make things worse. I had a huge crush on his friend James. He knew this. James liked me too, but made my brother promise he wouldn't date me. Anyway, I was going to a friend's house for the entire weekend. When I got back, I thought someone had died. My mom was at the sink, staring out the window, questioning where she had gone wrong. My dad was working in the yard, too angry to come inside. And my brother was at the table, enjoying it all. I had no idea what was about to happen. I was 14, and just for context, I lost my virginity at 18 after 6 months of dating. I was a late bloomer. My dad, with my brother beside him, called me to the garage. What is this? He handed me a crumpled piece of paper. I scanned it and saw things like, "Your is so soft," and signed "Your wet wonder." And I was like, I didn't know. Brother's poorly written notes, I assumed, and my dad lost it. I got screamed at for hours. I finally figured out my brother had written it while I was away and placed it somewhere my dad would find it. But my dad would never believe that. I was so sheltered. I didn't know what wet meant. So sheltered, I thought this was awesome revenge. I waited until my brother fell asleep, then took all our cereal boxes, chips, and other snacks. I opened each one and sprinkled the contents on his bed and floor. My dad woke him up, probably a good month later because too soon would have been obvious, screaming and asking what he was doing. Did he get in trouble? Yes, absolutely. Was it anything like my dad thinking I wrote inappropriate notes to my brother's friend? No. Story 84. My oldest is 20 now, but when he was 17, his friends kept hanging out until the early hours of the morning, and he would come in exhausted. He would drop his belongings on the floor and pass out for 12 hours on the couch. Curious, I went into his room and looked around. Right in the middle of the room was a traffic cone, one of the large triangular ones. I asked him about it, and he said it was going to be part of his Halloween costume. Sure enough, he was a massive traffic cone for Halloween and came home at a decent time. I have unusual kids, but I am proud of them. Story 85. A giant bag of googly eyes with a Johnny Cash CD. We are British people living in the United States for context. I have found some strange things after that child for many years, both legal and illegal, but the googly eyes surprised me. Story 86. My mother did this while I was a teenager. I have trust issues with her and cannot always tell the truth. I just cannot trust her near my personal stuff. She even opened my mail once, and I was very upset. Boundaries, people. Just talk to your teenager. Don't be their friend. Be their parent, someone they can trust with anything. Story 87. Not as a parent, but as a child, I was helping to clean up my older brother's room. When I went to reach for the tissues under his computer desk, my brother suddenly yelled at me to leave them. I was confused and did not understand why until a couple of years later when I became a teenager. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.